Welcome to the HeroFront Podcast, the 2022 Veteran Podcast of the Year winner. I'm your host, Josh White, and I talk with heroes around the world to inspire, educate, and to remind you that you are not alone. My own personal journey was marked by struggles like depression and alcoholism, which led me to almost lose my life. Now, after years of working on myself, I'm now blessed to say I have an abundance of pride and purpose, and I have made it my mission to share and spread these lessons by having insightful interviews with inspiring individuals, emphasizing trust, transparency, and meaningful conversation to drive positive action in our lives. Above all, I aim to inspire you to unleash your inner hero. We all have it in us, and it's time to bring it to the front lines of our lives. Let's get after it. What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining us yet again for another epic episode learning all about our heroes around the world. Some of which you're very familiar with, and some of which you've never heard of before. And I love that. I love that there's a mix of both, right? Well, this episode is going to be a very downloaded episode because I'm talking to Colonel Tucker Hamilton, call sign Cinco. This guy is one of the most talented and unique human beings I think I've ever met in my entire life. And a lot of people also know that about him. And so I predict this episode will do very well. So thank you, Colonel Hamilton, for spending time with me on HeroFront. It was great, interviewing you in person, having you as a guest speaker at the Air Force Ball. It's just been an amazing experience spending time with you. So thank you. Let's get into his background a little bit. All right. So Colonel Tucker Hamilton is not your ordinary pilot. He's a trailblazer in the world of aviation as an experimental fighter test pilot for the United States Air Force and the director of the F-35 Integrated Test Force. He's been at the forefront of cutting-edge technology and innovation. Cinco has led the way as a lead test pilot on 11 test programs, being a champion for the latest software systems and artificial intelligence. During this captivating talk, Colonel Hamilton delved into the fascinating world of artificial intelligence, showcasing its potential and impact on aviation and beyond. He also touches upon the power of human connection and resilience, sharing a very personal and tragic story that remind us all of our incredible capacity of resiliency, love, remembrance, and overcoming challenges, using the story for the greater good. We are so privileged to have heard from a true expert in the field on so many professions. He's truly one of a kind. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the hero's journey of Colonel Tucker Cinco Hamilton.
Let's get after it.
Oh, dang. We did get a sound of freedom in the background.
About to get a few more probably taken off.
Oh, right. Yes, I live on base, so
You know it.
It's all day long. Like, my kids can sleep through it now because it's just like background noise at this point.
Yeah. Well, it's like at Edwards, we boom the bass.
You boomed the bass. What does that mean?
You're allowed to go supersonic right over the bass.
Wow.
So the families get used to loud explosions throughout the entire day caused by people going supersonic over.
So they're breaking the sound barrier?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We do a bunch of testing out there where we have to do that. Total kids sleeping, doing your boom.
It's loud.
Yeah.
It shakes the whole house.
Scares the crap out of people.
Yeah, it must be. How does that feel when you're in the plane?
Oh, nothing.
You don't even feel that?
No. Oh, well, you're going faster than the speed of sound, so you don't hear any of that.
What about when you slow down? Does it catch up to you?
No. I mean, the only thing you see in the plane is the altimeter, and the airspeed kind of just like jump around a little bit because you're going transonic, and there's all these weird dynamics that are happening with a pitot static system. But no, you don't feel anything.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Okay, so I usually start with the Hero's Gauntlet, which is 3 random questions.
All right, hit me.
Okay, so the first one would be, have you seen Top Gun Maverick?
Yes. I have an interesting story about that, but yeah, please continue.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I thought it was great.
Okay, so my question about that is, could you have pulled off that mission that they pulled off, where they went straight up, went over that ridge, went inverted straight down, and was and was able to shoot those targets. And I think they were above 8 Gs, which is like
Yeah, they were pulling 10 Gs.
which is might be impossible to stay awake.
No, it's not impossible. The plane would not be able to do that. So the Hornet does not do that many Gs. So you know
Gotcha.
when Maverick like takes the tech order, he's like, "This is everything you know about the Hornet," and he like throws it in the trash. He's like, "I'm going to teach you." That's not like how it works. Right. What would happen is every time they go out and they try to pull 10 Gs, they would like rip parts of the plane off. Like the plane is not meant
Wow.
to pull 10 Gs. Now the Raptor and the Viper and the C model, like they can definitely, they over G, but you can pull 10 Gs. The Raptor can, I think, I know a buddy that pulled 10 Gs and they did not over G the plane.
It even showed their vision come down to like that when he had to hit that target.
Yeah. But we have like G suits and everything we wear. So that movie, I actually met with Jerry Bruckheimer and Joe Kosinski, the director,
Oh, wow.
in 2017, before they even wrote Maverick. I met them at a Lockheed Martin plant in Palmdale, California. It was myself. I was the only active duty person there, an F-35 pilot, at the time. And a few Lockheed Martin people, another PA person. There was like 5 of us. And we talked for like 3 hours about what Maverick had been up to. Because, he starts as a test pilot. Like
Right.
that's what he's been doing, for the past 30 years.
Right.
Either way. So yeah, it was awesome to meet them and talk to them about the story before they had even written it. And then a number of things we discussed came out in the film, which was great to see.
Wow.
There's realism to what they were doing.
Which is great. I love that they did, and they even have age in there.
Yeah.
When they crash behind enemy lines and they're trying to start up that old jet, and they have to start the age
They have to
equipment.
start the age equipment. That's right.
And so that was my first
Yeah.
career field. So that was like all over the age Facebook pages. Like people like, oh my gosh, we're actually in the movie. And I was like, that actually is kind of cool that they paid attention to that little of details. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, second question.
Yeah.
A lot of people are interested in books, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like people love hearing what leaders are reading. And so my second question is, what are you reading? What's one of your go-to books?
I will say I really enjoyed the book Range. So that is the idea, Epstein wrote that. It was the idea of, it was a kind of the counter idea of the 10,000 hours from Malcolm Gladwell.
Okay.
Have you ever heard the 10,000 hours?
I haven't.
To
I heard
get
of
good at
Malcolm-
something,
Oh.
you need to do 10,000 hours.
I've heard that, yes.
And so Range is this counter to a certain extent that says, well, actually, to be most effective as a leader, we need people that have breadth of experience, not necessarily depth of certain experience. So it's sometimes better to have breadth. Either way, very good book. I enjoyed that. I read a lot of other books too, but they're like other things, some philosophy, some religion. I kind of run the gamut. Some classics. I'm reading some really good books right now that I've enjoyed. But either way, I'm
Nice.
kind of all over the place. But there's a number of AI books that I think are pretty cool.
Yeah, I think I see one.
yeah.
Well, does that say T-minus AI?
Yeah, T-minus AI is a buddy of mine, Mike Kanan, wrote that. It's a really good, really well-written, really good, thought-provoking book that I highly recommend for people. And then there's another book I'm really looking forward to reading. A mentor of mine, Brigadier General retired John Tykert, wrote this book called Boom.
I think I saw that on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah. There's The Art of Clear Thinking, the author of The Art of Clear Thinking, which is great, Hazard Lee.
Hazard Lee.
Yeah, Hazard's
Okay.
great. But he actually helped me at the beginning by going to his followers and be like, hey, follow, right? And it just, it's a theme that I hope other people take. Like, we all get support from so many people.
Right.
And it's completely a collaborative life that we live.
Right. We can really lift each other up and share each other's stories and what makes us unique.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I'm a fan of that. I want to do it for a living one day.
Yeah.
Okay, third question. I don't think I've ever met a colonel as good at social media than you are.
Yeah.
Never seen that before. Are you running that personally? Do you have help with that? Like, how has that been so successful for you?
Yeah, social media has been funny. I mean, I started it during the pandemic because I got bored, and I was at a non-flying job at the time, And, honestly, I started it because I knew it was an important platform for me to understand. And my kids, I have 4 kids. My oldest is now 16. And I wanted to understand social media at a deeper level because they were going to have to understand social media at a deeper level as they're going through this.
It's going to be a big part
cultural,
of their lives.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely a huge part of their life. So I actually got involved to learn more about it. Nice. And I had a ton of videos from my F-35 test experience that were all cleared. So I started just kind of taking apart the videos and making small videos and putting posts of me, in front of planes and
right. Which is, I love that because we don't get to see into the life of a pilot, the way that you've shown it. Yeah. So I think as far as recruitment and retention and showing the potential cool stuff you could be doing, I appreciate seeing everything you're doing. I thought that was so unique at what you were bringing to the table, and I thought it was just incredible. So I'm a big fan of it. We get to see what it's like for you flying around up there. Yeah. Which money can't even buy that. That's why I love pilots, because they do something that even some rich dude couldn't just pay for and say, hey, let me fly that jet. Yeah. They couldn't even do that if they wanted to. Yeah. It's that rare.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. That it's unique. I've been very fortunate, very blessed. I've really enjoyed my career. And dude, there are times where I'm like, how did I even fall into this? It's amazing. And I'm really glad that I can share it on Instagram. Definitely. It's fun to be able to show the videos, and I try to always stay positive, and right, it's such a cool career field, and there's stories to be told, and there's people out there that have better stories than me. And I want to encourage them too to be able to share their story.
And then this is the bonus question I ask anyone serving: your proudest Air Force moment.
Ooh, yeah. There's been a few that I've been really honored to be a part of some teams. So I'd say, and we may get into the conversation later, but the team that I was involved with developing automatic ground collision avoidance and automatic air collision avoidance, particularly automatic ground collision avoidance for the F-35, that was a really impactful, moment in my career where I'm just really proud of what we accomplished. And it was, once again, it was just all a team. It was a huge team of people that made that happen. And then other things, dude, I was flying in combat in an MC-12, which is an intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance aircraft. And we were the eyes and the ears of special operators on the ground. And that was an amazing team to be a part of. I was the initial cadre. So we stood up the platform. That's and we were figuring out how it was going to be used in combat in Afghanistan. I was the first, other than the squadron commander, I was the first mission commander for the platform, the first mission that we went outside the wire basically and did stuff.
So you were part of some really cutting edge things.
Yeah, it was so cool. And then on top of that, the MIT AI Accelerator, what an amazing team. And not just team of military, but team of academia. Right. And that partnership, I think, is so important for our future.
Oh, absolutely. So let's start with your upbringing. Where did you grow up, and how did you get to where you're at today?
Yeah. So I grew up kind of all around until the age of 8, where I was in Evergreen, Colorado. But before then, there's a story that just came to mind that I don't mind sharing. It was really impactful, and I do think that it shaped me as a young man and then into my adulthood. When I was 6, we lived in Connecticut, and my mom and my dad got a divorce. So my mom's an amazing woman. We have an amazing relationship now. But back then it was just too much parenting, and she walked away basically. And she lived, I forget, but it was, 20, 40 minutes away, something like that. But my dad took care of us, and my mom then ended up getting pregnant. And my parents weren't together, and the father of my mom's kid was 23 years old. My mom was 42.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he was married and had his own family, right? So it gets complicated.
Right.
And my dad did the first heroic thing that I can remember. He went to my mom and said, let's start again. Let's move to Colorado and start again. And so my dad left. He's an Ivy League educated vice president of a restaurant chain on the East Coast, and like up and left. I remember going out to Colorado with my mom. We drove, and he came a few days later, or weeks later. And we started over, man. And they fell back in love over a couple years. They got remarried to each other.
Wow.
And my dad, for the first 6 months of living in Evergreen, Colorado, was a garbage man. And then the next 6 months, he was a fence pole digger.
Oh, wow.
Because he was overqualified in a lot of positions. And he sacrificed, in my like 8-year-old brain, it was 8 when it happened. He sacrificed so much because he understood what was most important to him.
Right, like that came before anything. I mean, even your ego would play a role in that.
Oh yeah.
To go from doing the stuff he was doing to garbage truck and making fences. I mean, that's a hard pill to swallow, but it just goes to show you like how much he cared. Especially, I mean, that's incredible. You don't usually hear stories end like that. Yeah. And I had a very similar upbringing. My mom couldn't raise me either. My dad raised me. And so, we have that for sure in common. Yeah. So once you said that, I was like, whoa.
It was such a great lesson. I mean, he raised my brother. Technically my half brother, but he's just been my brother, my whole life. And my relationship with my mom couldn't be better. I will say they fell back in love. He got cancer a few years later and passed away. No. Right. But and there was still like, there's this image of him and the bravery and the heroism. The sacrifice that he made, the prioritization call that he made at the time. He was a workaholic. He was addicted to gambling, right? Like there's always this yin and yang of all of us.
We're all human still.
Yeah. And so I think ultimately my why, my parents were volunteer firefighters. My mom was a paramedic, right? I wanted to serve. I didn't know how. I had no desire to join the military. That wasn't like this dream of mine. I had no desire to fly. That was never a dream of mine.
Wow. A lot of times I talk to pilots, they're like, since I was 2, that's what I wanted to do. So I love that lesson too, that, you were just open to life.
I've lived my life very intentional with my work ethic, working hard, but not as intentional as people would imagine of like, I'm going to make this goal and then I'm going to get there and I'm going to like, no, I feel like providence is real. And I need to trust in purpose. And I don't necessarily always know what that purpose may be. And I'll tell you, man, I dropped out of high school, so I'm a high school dropout. It's kind of funny, just because I'm not really. I say that, and my wife's like, "No, I got my GED.
Right.
I still went to high school, but I did it part-time. I did homeschooling for some subjects. I didn't get my diploma because I didn't do the certain subjects they needed. I homeschooled for those subjects because I found high school like somewhat boring.
Wow.
And not that I'm smart, but I just didn't like going to an hour-and-a-half class. We had like block schedule, hour and a, 3 classes a day, but every other day you swap. So it's like an hour and 45-minute, hour-and-a-half class where we'd learn 5 minutes worth of material and be like, I could just read this at home.
Right.
So at a very young age, I also had this mentality of like, man, I want to be more efficient with my time.
Right. What a lesson for that to hit you that young. I didn't get that until I was like 30.
Yeah. So I dropped out of high school full-time, got my GED, and then went to college. I didn't have like a major initially. I was in the engineering school, but I didn't have aerospace engineering until later. And I did like ROTC on a whim. I had no desire to join the military, but I saw Saving Private Ryan that summer. Like that was 1998. Yeah. Oh, and Braveheart. Braveheart was like the first movie that, like it made me cry. Right. Like I remember like bawling because I was like, freedom's not free. I get it.
Like he died for that purpose.
Yeah. Like now, of course, it's all like a lie. That's not how any of that unfolded in history.
Still a great movie.
But still an amazing movie. Very impactful. So I understood from that movie this idea of freedom's not free. And then Saving Private Ryan hits in 1998. And I wasn't in college yet. I was about to go to college. I was like, oh my goodness, like it was really powerful. Right. And so I tried ROTC on a whim, and then I fell in love with it right away because the people are amazing and you're doing something bigger than yourself. But I also never planned on flying. Like I wasn't even eligible to fly.
Really? Why?
So I had astigmatism, depth perception. And I never really cared. I never like wanted to be a pilot. So I had an astigmatism problem, but then right before graduating, they're like, hey, we think if you get these glasses and take this test again, you'll be eligible. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'll give it a try. I wanted to serve. I wanted to be an officer in the military, right? Like that's why I did it. I believed in like the actual skill of leadership, right? That profession of being a leader is what drove me into ROTC. And then pilot, I was like, well, I guess I'll give it a try. And so I ended up getting a pilot slot like right before graduating college, and went to pilot training with the Navy. I did Navy pilot training. And I almost quit pilot training numerous times because I found it boring.
Yeah, there's a lot of tedious stuff you probably have to learn, right? Like every inch of that aircraft you got to learn, and that's a lot to take in.
Well, yeah, and you have to sign up for 10 years.
Right, it's a huge commitment.
Yeah,
so that's a huge investment in you.
Do I love this flying enough that I'm going to commit 10 years of my life to do it? And so my wife convinced me, and I've been married for almost 22 years now. We got married right out of college. She convinced me to stick with it, and I am so thankful because I've loved it. The team, the technology, the mission, like it is such a thrilling experience to help basically our national security through being able to fly fighters. It turns out I was like good at it. I played a lot of video games growing up because my parents were absent quite a bit. Once again, the yin and the yang. Like I was home a lot playing video games. I'd like competed in national
we have that in common
championships and stuff.
Mine was Halo 3.
Nice.
I was like ranked 19th worldwide. That was my passion.
That's amazing, dude.
Yeah, that was my passion before
Yeah.
I committed fully to the Air Force, but we got that in common as well.
Yeah.
And to backtrack a little bit, when you're talking about those movies, I thought of the one that really inspired me.
Yeah.
And it's Gladiator.
Oh, great movie.
That's the one that I was like, I want to find something worth fighting for.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
So I love that you brought up movies because, that whole art imitates life and life imitates art.
Yeah.
And there's this cycle that really affects our world.
Yeah.
It really does.
It's interesting. I feel like that's always been a part of me. So I dropped out of high school, but still got involved or stayed involved. But I really found my footing in high school. So I didn't have any friends and I was bullied a lot. Like it wasn't this smooth like high school experience where I'm like, I'm dropping out. And all my friends were like I didn't have any friends. I got involved with musical theater, and that like totally changed my entire high school experience, confidence, and all these other things. And so I started like acting and went to Les Mis in London.
Oh wow!
It just like blew my mind. With one, it's just a beautiful story, and two, that art form really like spoke to me. And I almost went to college and studied musical theater. I'm not good. Like I really was not that good. So
there's another dimension out there where you're in Les Mis.
No, I didn't have the range. I wasn't talented the way that, but I was thinking about it because there's something about that aspect of our brains that I think it's important. Like you can be a warfighter and you can like enjoy musical theater. Right. I'm not a huge, I don't want to be like, I love musical. I love going to a good musical or a good play. I feel like there's not many out there nowadays. But the point is like art and being a warfighter, I don't think are mutually exclusive,
Definitely. You need that creative mind especially to do what you do, to think outside the box.
Yeah.
And art plays a huge role in how you see the world, what the limitations are, and then thinking past that.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think my art is editing, video editing, telling a story, trying to incite an emotion. And I'm good at that because I love that for myself.
Yeah.
Like I know what strikes a chord with me.
Yeah.
And so I want other people to feel that. And so that's where my artistic side really comes out, is the editing. So,
yeah, I mean, at that point, I got fighters. I got F-15Cs, and then I became the single-seat air-to-air fighter. And it was a blast. I loved flying the plane. I got to the 58th Fighter Squadron, the Guerrillas, back in 2005 as my first fighter squadron. And dude, it was amazing. I really loved the camaraderie, the mission. It was a challenge. Being a fighter pilot is like way more complicated than I think people realize. It's not just about like jumping to your plane and going doing a few loops,
Right.
It is 12 to 14-hour days, like 6 days a week, working on the 7th day as well, learning about your system, learning about other like adversarial systems, and then like knowing the tactics so well that you can decide like what you need to do in a split second in order to maybe save lives of, because you're trying to take down, as an air-to-air fighter, take down a bomber that's trying to attack a city, or you're trying to go in and break through enemy defenses. And so when you merge with another fighter aircraft or another aircraft in general that is adversarial, you need to know, like, in a split second, like, what is that pilot's training like? What is that pilot's systems like? Do they have a special helmet that allows them to look certain ways? Do they have special missiles? You could have one bad guy aircraft from one country and a different bad guy, or same aircraft from a different country, and they have different tactics and different systems that are on their aircraft. So you need to know immediately what to do in scenarios, and it is so much more complex.
I can't even imagine, like, it like, to get your, adrenaline pumping like that, like, and having to protect yourself and protect your team while also thinking about how to approach that enemy. So you're thinking in two different ways.
Well, and you're thinking in 3 dimensions as well.
Right.
Because now it's very similar to tactics you have, like, with infantry. I just rewatched Band of Brothers, which is amazing. And Dick Winters and them, like, deciding the tactics in order to take out pillboxes, right? It's similar in the sense, like, there are legitimate tactics that we are running against a threat based on what we're seeing, and you have to know your role in that tactic, and so it is way more intense than people realize. It's not just like flying; that's just a small portion, and it's about learning from our mistakes. So the debrief is so important, and that is a great life lesson, because we oftentimes kind of experience something and then we move on, but in a fighter pilot's world, we, like, experience something and then we debrief it to learn from what we just did. So we'll do, like, a mission that is 20 minutes worth of engagement, and we'll talk about it for 4 hours. We'll run through everyone's tapes. We'll ask them, like, what they were thinking, why they made certain decisions, what they could have done better in that scenario. And then you will literally spend hours debriefing a 20-minute mission.
You have another role, right?
Yeah, so I work down here at Eglin as the operations group commander, but I'm also the chief of AI test and operations for the Department of the Air Force.
What does that entail?
Well, it's a role that AI is this emerging technology, if you will. I mean, not really. It's been around for like 40 years. But it's emerging in the sense that the convergence of big data, algorithm development, and compute power has made it so it is extremely accessible for people to use AI.
So it's like the mass public is now aware of it, of its inner workings. Yeah,
and about 5 years ago is when people really started recognizing that it was ready, because it's been around for decades, and there's been times where people thought it was ready, and then AI winters would happen, they would call them. And so from my experience at MIT as a director of the AI Accelerator up there, that was a brand new organization, first of its kind, the only dedicated AI unit in the Department of the Air Force. And actually, it was created at first just under the Air Force, but then the Space Force came around, and so it became the Department of the Air Force, MIT AI Accelerator. At first, we were just the Air Force. Either way, not many people understood AI, and still, actually, we struggle with that. And so when I left there to come here, I wanted to make sure that I was very focused on trying to bring that experience of AI here. And so at the same time, I was helping the Chief Data and AI Office kind of stand up their AI arm. And in order to help, we gave me this title to try to empower empower the ecosystem, if you will, and operationalize AI machine learning based on the work we're doing down here at Eglin, and the work that now we're doing widely. And so it was a role to help the CDAO, the DAF, Chief Data and AI Office. There's a OSD office, Office of Secretary of Defense. So there's a DoD CDAO. There's a DAF CDAO. I help the DAF CDAO. But helping the DAF CDAO like understand what's going on at the tactical level so that they can be most informed in developing policy and regulation at the strategic level. So I'm somewhat of a conduit.
How cool is that?
For those organizations.
I mean, you get all this like training invested in you, and then it's like, now apply it. And it's up to you, in a sense, how you're going to go about doing that. That's when real change happens.
Yeah.
You know, when you have oversight of something and you have to utilize your creative control. How do I take what I just saw, what I just learned, and apply it?
And now it's evolving. Like, we're going to change the position a little bit as I move on, because I'm only here for another 5 months. And I feel like we've been helping develop the ecosystem for the DAF CDAO. A lot of times we talk, and the secretaries talked about this, Secretary of the Air Force talked about this, there's like 1,000 blooming flowers. And the idea is everyone is creating their own flower, right? Like, they have siloed efforts. They're duplicated as well. So they're like all over the place. None of them are scalable. They're not adoptable for the enterprise. And so the idea is we need to bring all those flowers like into the same flower garden, right? Like, we need to create a foundation that has the right data architecture and data pipelines and platforms that allows people's wonderful creative ideas that they're creating at their different bases or their units, and allow them to thrive in an ecosystem that can actually take them and do something with it that's much broader than just a simple base. And then also find efficiencies so we're not duplicating effort and we're collaborating more. And so I've been really focused on trying to make this like the DAF CDAO more of a gardener mindset. Like, we need to bring these ideas together, because the most powerful thing we have as a U.S. military, definitely U.S. Air Force and Space Force, are our members. They are really brilliant. And what I learned in this AI space is the people that are smartest regarding the capability or the technology are the young airmen and guardians who on the weekend are like studying AI and Python on the weekends and in their garage and creating their own solutions.
Real purpose and passion for it. And some amazing things can come out of those conversations.
Yeah. So I'm trying to empower that ecosystem, help establish it, empower it, and then codify certain policies that would allow us to tap into that airman, that guardian, and scale their ideas. It's been great. I've loved the marriage of being the OG, where we're doing a bunch of AI and autonomy work, like this conduit to the DAF CDAO. And, you know, kudos to leadership through AFTC and the Secretary of Staff, the CDAO, SES. So that's like the senior civilian, the chief data and AI office, for allowing me basically to do that. And I think it's been beneficial for all organizations.
Awesome. Sounds like, and I see a lot of the idea stuff too. I've been doing enough bases to where I've seen them and no one really adopt them.
Yeah.
You know, that is hard, especially when we PCS and we're moving around. The continuity is not always there to continue that. So the fact that you have an oversight of it and maybe you can bring it together, I think that is incredibly important to make something stick. You're big on resilience, and you have an incredible story about resilience. So I was hoping you could share that with us.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. I think ultimately we all go through experiences that are very challenging, right? And it doesn't need to be like what I'm going to describe. It could be what some would consider small, but really big in your life, right? And it could be a personal struggle, or it could be something with alcohol or drugs, or right, or relationships. It's complicated and it's messy being a human.
We all have a different perspective,
right,
of resilience. We all have a different path to finding it.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate that as well.
And how you pick yourself back up is really important. Even the way that I just said that, I kind of cringed, because I actually think we have this mindset that we have to pick ourselves back up. But it's never about us picking ourselves back up. It's always about the people around us that help us get back up. When I was in the 58th Fighter Squadron flying F-15Cs, I was dogfighting with my wingman over the Gulf of Mexico. The year was 2008. It was February 20th, 2008. And we were doing something called high aspect BFM, basic fighter maneuvers. It's dogfighting. And I could actually, do you want to hand me those sticks? I could show you. Yeah, off the wall.
Oh, wow. These are like props?
Yeah. So we use these actually in our briefings and our debriefings to demonstrate what we want the aircraft to do or look like. You can teach someone basically. They're training tools.
Wow. It's so simple, but it works so well.
Oh yeah, no, it's great. Okay, so we were doing high aspect dogfighting where you start here, but this dogfighting is called high aspect where you start here. You merge, and then you start fighting, basically.
Wow.
And you're trying to get to a position of advantage. So my wingman and I, we merge, and then we start maneuvering, going very fast, trying to get to the back part, but it's going to take some time. And so we start maneuvering, and I go up in the vertical here, and my wingman and I are still kind of engaged. And at this point, we're 5,300 feet away from each other, and we're 7 seconds from a midair collision. We don't know it at the time. What happens is I feel like that's weird because he's not moving on my canopy. If someone is moving on your canopy, it's around us, that means you're not on a collision course, right? You can imagine if you're driving, you can even do it. You can kind of do this exercise. If something is moving relative to you on your windshield, like you're not on a collision course with that thing. But if you see slight movement, like if you're the pilot and you're looking at this and you see slight movement on your canopy, you know that movement's going to increase and but if you see no movement like this, you're on a collision course. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now, if you're doing this and you see movement like this, you're not on a collision course anymore. You see, because it's just so
your mind is piecing together the direction they're going to end up in based on that movement.
And mind you, when you're flying fighter aircraft, you're seeing aircraft that are like the size of this little thing, and they grow bigger and bigger. Of course, that's kind of how we teach people. Like you see like a plane and it starts blossoming and getting bigger. You have to try to assess people's energy state, what flight path they are on, in very quick millisecond snippets that you get as you're looking outside. So either way, we're 5,300 feet away from each other, and I'm this aircraft up here, and we don't recognize that our collision is 7 seconds away. And then it seems weird to me because I'm like, he's not moving on my canopy, which happens all the time. Like there are plenty of times where there's no movement and then there's movement, right? But here is like, oh, he's not moving. This seems uncomfortable. And then by the time we're at 3,000 feet, there's nothing either of us could have done to avoid the collision. Because of our energy state, and we're going so fast, combined 500 mile an hour, he basically, myself, we're on this collision because even if I tried to maneuver out of the way, I'd still have to go this way in order to get lift on my wings and move. So even if I tried to do this, we would still collide. And so at 5,300 feet, 7 seconds, 3,000 feet, there's nothing either of us could have done. And my nose is coming downhill. He's pulling inside the turn here. And at the last second, literally, I think with 1 second left, he bunts his aircraft and he collides about 20 feet behind my cockpit. At I think around 500 mile an hour collision, basically where his front of his aircraft goes to my mid-body.
Wow.
And I'm watching this thing unfold because as I'm this aircraft, I'm like, that looks weird. That's uncomfortable. It's too late. There's nothing I could have done. And so I roll up at the last second. I brace for impact as I'm pulling too as much as I could. I brace for an impact, and it is immense.
The violent force.
Yes, violence is the right word.
Right.
Yeah, so we collide. I lose my vision right away, but not my consciousness. We call it graying out. So I get my vision back after a few seconds, and it's not a fluid memory. It's all compartmentalized. It's all snippets of memory. I remember I'm stuck up in the seat because what I don't know at the time is my aircraft is tumbling through, and so it's kind of forcing me out of my seat a little bit. And so I remember I'm up in my seat getting pushed out, and I remember the fire lights are going off saying that aircraft's on fire. And then I remember reaching down to try to turn off the engines because that's what happens in fire. You turn off the engine that's on fire. And then I remember looking up and seeing we have three rearview mirrors in the F-15, and I remember seeing completely engulfed in flames. So I reached down at this point and pulled the ejection handles because I know there's no way I'm surviving this if I were to stay with the aircraft. And I go from this mass chaos, violence, to this eerie silence, dream state.
Floating.
Where you're like, what? Is this real? What just happened?
That had to have shattered your whole reality.
Oh yeah, you're just what is going on right now? It was nuts. Under this not clear thinking, I accidentally dropped my survival equipment. So there's there's a whole story behind it, but there's a checklist we go through: canopy visor, mast, sea kit, LPU, 4-line steer, prepare, land. Like when you eject, that's what you go through. And so I know the checklist, and I am saying
You
it.
just did it too early?
No, I'm saying it all fast. Canopy visor, mast, sea kit, LPU, 4-line steer. But I have to keep restarting it because my mind is not really with it. And so I keep having to restart it and do different steps. But I get to the seat kit part, and I instinctually reach down and detach my seat kit, which you're not supposed to do if you eject. Because when you emergency ground egress in a fighter aircraft, emergency ground egress, there's also seat kit in that checklist, and you detach your seat kit. When you eject and you get to seat kit, you don't detach your seat kit. You just make sure that it's beneath you. And in my situation, I instinctually just detached it, and I lost all my survival equipment. So I had LPU around my neck, and I hit the water, 6-foot waves, 60 degrees.
Gosh.
And I don't have anything. I don't have my life raft or my radios or my
Wow.
water, anything that would basically help them find me or help me stay alive.
Like you're just literally stuck floating in the ocean.
Yeah. And so I'm there for a couple hours. No one can find me, of course, because I don't have anything that would indicate where I'm at. And dude, a 25-foot fishing vessel that was out for the day 70 miles south of Panama City, like, happened upon me in the middle of the Gulf of
Wow.
Mexico. So they rolled up next to me and they're like, "Hey man, you want to ride?" And I'm just like, freezing. I was shivering within 2 minutes of hitting the water, very cold. And I was like, "Yes, please," and they pulled me up and I was saved. And tragically, my wingman died. He died on impact. He was an amazing wingman. He was a great dude. Like, what a joy to be around. And it sticks with me today, man. It's hard to lose your friend. And I was a part of this. Like, it was a mistake. It was a mistake we both made. And now, like, how do you move on? Right. And that's something that I've
I feel like
always
that would give you PTSD in a way.
Yeah, you could. I think that I haven't felt that I've officially had PTSD or anything. There are moments, flashbacks. There's often days where I will think of him fondly. I think the reality is, you go through experiences like this, and it's just wildly different for other people, and you have to appreciate that. Like, I was alive the entire time, even though I thought I was going to die for a period of time. I was in the Gulf, but I was dead to my wife for a few hours because she knew that I was in a collision, and she knew that they hadn't found me, and so she thought I was dead. Right? And totally different experience for my wingman and his family who lost their loved one. Right? Like, I didn't die, and they didn't lose me, and so there's all these different emotions. I have continually tried to honor his memory in the way that I serve, in the way that I live my life with my family very intentionally. And so it's just been this experience that I think is valuable for other people when you think about resiliency and how you move on. Because while I was sitting in the Gulf of Mexico, I would have never thought, fast forward 10 years, even less. No, it was around 10 years. Fast forward 10 years, and I would have been a key person involved in the Air Force, the military, not just the Air Force, the military adopting life-saving technology that keeps pilots from hitting the ground and hitting each other.
Wow.
Right. But
So
I wouldn't have known it when I thought I was going to die and I was in the middle of the Gulf, right?
What were you thinking in the Gulf? That's a lot of time to think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reflection of, well, one, you have the thought, what's underneath me right now? So you have the terrifying
Sharks.
realization that you're in the middle of the ocean. I think you can't do anything about that, so you put that out of your mind right away. I did at least. And then you think about your family, and you think about your faith, your spiritual aspect, and so it was a very reflective moment. And I feel like I came out of that experience not with necessarily a different perspective on anything, but it was more of a calming through the rest of my life, in the sense that experience wasn't calming. It's terrifying, but you go through something like that and you realize like, okay, what are my priorities? What am I living for? Life is fragile. And so when you really have those near-death experiences, it gives you more of a calming purpose of like, all right, well, I'm going to live my life more intentionally because you appreciate it more.
Right. Yeah. Not letting the little things hold you up from enjoying your life that you might have had in your way. And now what I think is incredible is that you've leveraged that by living in your wingman's honor and turned that into saving pilots' lives.
Yeah.
And so I was hoping we could roll into AI technology and your role in helping to save pilots' lives.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, ultimately what happened was a few years later, I got accepted into test pilot school, which was this huge honor. And I just so happened to be a part of the test pilot school where they needed a team of people to work on the first ever automatic air collision avoidance technology. So that's when two aircraft know they're going to hit each other because they're talking to each other. The aircraft aren't really talking the way humans talk.
They can sense each other through...
Yeah, they mathematically realize that they're on a collision course. And so they take control away from the pilots at the last second and avoid the collision.
Isn't that amazing?
And give control back.
That is amazing.
It's the same with automatic ground collision avoidance. The aircraft knows it's going to hit the ground, so it takes control away from the pilot and recovers the aircraft and then gives control back to the pilot once it's recovered, which has been hugely successful in F-16s. So I was a part of the first ever automatic air collision avoidance technology, which then got me involved with the collision avoidance team, Lockheed Martin and the AFRL, Air Force Research Lab, and others who were working on that. And so then I was in charge of F-35 development, and we wanted to adopt auto GCAS, ground collision avoidance, into the F-35 9 years earlier than they had planned. And so it was this huge effort to try to make that possible.
Wasn't there a lot of pushback at first?
There was. So automatic ground collision avoidance was developed in the 90s, really by NASA and the Air Force Research Lab and others, and test pilots. And it was ready for the Viper F-16 in the early 2000s, but we didn't adopt it into the F-16 until 2014. And so there were 17 pilots that died in that period of time when it was ready, and it could have been saving people in 2014 when it was implemented. And the reason why, and by the way, I will say, since 2014 to now, almost 2024, there have been 12 pilots and 11 aircraft saved with auto GCAS in just the F-16. And pilots trust the system, and they typically won't do certain missions without it working because they want it working to save their lives if they need to. It's the goalie there. Regardless, why, the real question, why wasn't it adopted from 2000 to 2014? And a lot of it was just trust in the technology. Pilots, some through arrogance and just some through ignorance, right, didn't know that they could trust the technology. And that's the struggle that we're dealing with regarding AI capability, right? And by the way, autonomy and AI are different things. The autonomy I'm talking about is not AI at all. Auto GCAS, auto ACAS, that is just good old software code. AI is...
learns on the way.
Yeah, it's also software code. It's not magic. It's math, right? But it's kind of, you can think of it it's software code that's rewriting itself based on the data that it's getting. So it's learning. It doesn't learn it's just computer, right? But that's the difference between the two. So everything we've talked about so far is just auto GCAS, auto ACAS, is autonomy, not AI at all. But the future is AI-enabled autonomy. And so now we're at this point where we need to have a real tension, because they're how do you trust technology enough to be able to use it and adopt it? But how do you not over-trust it so that you find yourself in a situation like people are doing now with ChatGPT, where they think it has the end-all, be-all, give me examples of, whatever. And then ChatGPT will, people call it hallucinate, but it'll just make stuff up.
Right. It's not always right.
Yeah,
I've definitely caught it being wrong.
Totally.
Then told it was wrong, and then it apologizes and corrects itself.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
Yeah, so, once again, don't anthropomorphize it, and people shouldn't. It's not human, it's not learning, it's not thinking the way that we're thinking. I mean, it's communicating the way that we've taught it to. You need guardrails in the system. But ultimately, how do you develop this technology so that it is trustworthy? And one thing we would do with auto GCAS development, auto ACAS development, is the first and foremost is do no harm. You don't want to hurt anyone. So you need to make sure you put guardrails up so you're developing the technology in an effective way. And then you need it to not interfere with what you would have done anyway. Like, I don't auto GCAS. I don't want it to hurt me. So I don't want it to put me in the ground, put me into another airplane. I also don't want it to interfere with what I would typically do. And then I want it to work the way it's supposed to. So not interfering is like, I need to fly low sometimes around mountains, and I don't want it to just turn on all the time and fly me away from those mountains if I specifically want to be close to those mountains. So do no harm, don't interfere, and then work the way you're supposed to. And the same is going to be true for this technology. How do we develop it so that it is not hurting people, that it's not interfering with what we would have accomplished had we not had it? And then how do we use it to optimize human performance? And really the future of AI, especially AI-enabled autonomy, it's got to be about human-machine teaming. We've got to let AI do what it's good at and let humans do what they're good at, and now marry it together so that it's most effective to help us perform, right? Maybe that's helping a doctor recognize cancer on an x-ray, or maybe it's helping a pilot recognize that there's a threat or what they should be doing in the scenario. Maybe it's helping a lawyer write a better contract. We shouldn't hand the reins over,
right?
Because it's just software, and so we need to be engaged with it. And it's very exciting, huge potential, amazing things that it's going to do for our society, especially for aviation, national security. And those are the things we're really focused on developing responsibly, so that we do have the right guardrails, so that it's not going to go do anything unexpected. I mean, there are times where it's going to do things unexpected, but we need to put the right safety precautions around it. So for instance, we're teaching AI how to fly some drones, right? Mm-hmm. And so what we do is if it's given some objective of like accomplishing some task, usually like staying in a formation or doing something like that. If it asks for a bank angle that's too much, it immediately gets turned off. And it goes back to autonomous software. Once again, this is just like very narrow applications of AI. Mm-hmm. And there's autonomy software that kind of just regular deterministic, we call it software, that kind of surrounds it to make sure that it doesn't ask for anything too aggressive. And if it does, it's just immediately turned off, and people will be like, well, it's going to go in and it's going to make it so it can't get turned off. Like, no, that's not possible. It's just software. We've mathematically made it so that it cannot like overtake like this safety bubble that basically we've put around it. And we learned all those things from auto GCAS and auto ACAS development. Like, how did we test these systems? Well, very responsibly, deliberately, meticulously with test professionals. And that's the same approach we're trying to take with anything that's AI.
This might be like the corny movie guy in me,
Yeah.
But when you said it's not magic, to me, magic is it's self-aware. Is that just sci-fi, or is that eventually going to happen, in your opinion?
In my opinion, I think it would take different type of computing. I don't think mathematically that is our future of having sentient like AI anytime, if ever. Like, I think you would really need to bring in like biocomputing or quantum computing, something that we don't even like, to get to a point where like it is what I consider general AI. And I don't mean like Terminator. Sentient is almost too strong of a word. I don't think we'll ever get to sentient being. I think you're going to get to AI that can do more than one thing. Like right now, it's very narrow application. You can stack those narrow applications on top of each other to make it seem like it can do more. But yeah, I think you could get to a point where it can do more. Mm-hmm. But man, I do not buy into the hype of like, this is going to become aware, and now we have to create laws that like give it like rights, you know, like, no, we just are humans trying to anthropomorphize something because that's what we do.
Right.
When the reality is nowhere near there. Like, once again, it's just software. It's just math. Mm-hmm. We can put guardrails around it. Now, can nefarious people do horrible things with the technology? Absolutely. Like, the same is true for autonomous technology. The same is true for all technology. Are you kidding me? Like, look at our history and what we've done with technology.
Can be weaponized.
Any technology. So AI is just a piece of that. And so, no, I do not have the concerns or the fears, I should really say. I have concerns about nefarious applications, but I do not have the fears of AI becoming something that it mathematically cannot become.
But there is one thing I do want to put out there that I think is going to happen one day, and that is with ChatGPT and so many people relying on it. Like, it's to the point where I can even spot it now. But I think one day it's going to be a little harder to spot people using stuff like that. And I think for art, for movies, for articles, there's going to be some sort of software to prove that that was made by a human. I think it's going to get to that point where it has that human stamp, like a person wrote this from start to finish.
And that's what our society needs to probably grapple with, what that looks like, because we do need to protect human creativity. It's important for people to know, like, when you're talking to a robot on the phone compared to when you're talking to a human, right? Because it's just a tool. It's a robot. It's not a human, right? Like, once again, we don't want to anthropomorphize it, but we need to know, I think. And I do think it's important for us to develop as a society certain regulations or rules or standards where, we identify like, hey, this is AI powered, right, or created. It doesn't take away necessarily from the outcome. The output could be really cool still, but it's important for humans to know.
Definitely. Yeah. All right, last question for you. Yeah. Your call sign, Cinco.
Oh, yeah.
What's the story behind it?
Yeah, Cinco. So I was flying. I'll tell you the quick story. Brand new wingman, flying out of here, the Gorillas. And I was on my flight lead's wing. I was a couple miles away. Hard to see, we're like this size, if people want like this, quite small, when we're flying around. And we shoot our missiles at the bad guys as we're doing like a training mission. The bad guys are just planes that are also in our squadron that are just pretending to be the bad guys. So we shoot our missiles and we turn sideways to defeat missiles coming at us, and we turn back in. And this plane is me in this scenario. Okay. And you always, when you turn back in, you're out of position just because of the physics of the mechanics of the maneuver. And so my flight lead can't see me. He's like, 2, where are you? I'm like, 1, I'm at your left, 7 o'clock, 5 miles, closing. So I start like bringing it in, and then he's like, 2, 1, 30 seconds later, he's like, I still don't see you. I was like, 1, I'm at your left wing now, basically in position, and he doesn't see me. And he's like, 2, this is 1 again, I still don't see you. Where are you at? And so I'm like, I'm with a flash. So I start rocking my wings back and forth. Hard to see, easy to see. Right. So I start rocking my wings, and I start getting closer and closer, and he's getting upset, and I'm getting upset, and he's like, 2, where are you? And I was like, 1, I'm off your left wing at 3,000 feet, which is like way closer than you're supposed to be, with a flash flaring, and I start dropping flares out the back of my, I'm just dropping these flares, and there's a silence on the radio. He's like, 2, are you flying off one of the bad guys we killed out?
No.
And so I looked down at a scope that I have, that it was in front of me the entire time, and I'm 100 miles away from my flight lead. What happened is we turned this way. I never turned back in. I found one of the bad guys that we killed, and he kill removed. So he died, quote unquote died. So he flew this way. I saw him, and I just started flying off him. And I'm flying this way as my flight lead's flying this way.
I bet they ate that up.
And so he was like, get back in position, like furious. And so I plug it into 5 stages of afterburner, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to get back into position. Afterburner is amazing. It allows you to go super fast, but it also wastes all your fuel. So I rejoined on my flight lead, and we're supposed to protect a target area for 15 minutes, and I was immediately out of fuel, and I had to rush home to land because I was so low on fuel. So they called me Cinco for flying around in 5 stages of afterburner. Too much after the buffoonery. Yeah.
That's actually an amazing story.
Yeah. I love it too, because it is relatable to people. Like, when you're in the heat of the moment, you don't always take in the information that's around you. And it literally was right in front of me that my flight lead was not the person I was flying off of. But we get so channelized and we biased to a certain extent that we're unwilling to recognize what's in front of us, which is important for us to see, right? Like, there are other aspects that we need to be taking in order to make our best decisions. And in that example, I just wasn't, right? I was blind to it. And I don't want to be blind to innovation or technology or other people's perspectives, right? Like, I want to be open to those things and not buffoonerous.
It's definitely a humbling experience.
Yeah Indeed.
I love that. Any final thoughts you want to share?
It was really great chatting with you. For listeners out there, resiliency is not a single person sport, right? Like, there is an entire team that is there to help you, right? From your friends and your family to professionals, especially if you're in the military, there are tools and organizations, and I guarantee you the people that you're around like care about you. And so I just want people to know, like, the only reason I was able to move on from the tragedy that, like, was an error, but it wasn't just like a happenstance. Like, this was an error between my wingman and I that we made. To be able to move on from those type of failures in your life, you need to, like, get lifted up by other people. And then when you're ready and able, you need to be that person that turns around and helps other people up, right? And so don't think that you need to do it alone. People are there to help you. And then when you're back up, look around and start helping those other people, because we've got to be there for each other in order for us to thrive.
That's beautifully said. My final thought is I'm just thankful you're on our side.
Yeah, thanks.
Because you are such a unique person. And not only are you unique, but you found an incredible way to share that with people. You don't want to waste your story, right? Like if there's things that happen to you that other people will learn a lot from.
Yeah.
And you have found a way to leverage the stories into your purpose and into impacting people's lives and how we see the world. And I just want to thank you for showing what you do on Instagram, the cool stuff, to being vulnerable and sharing, those really, really hard times. I mean, just for you to articulate the story that you shared today, that's not easy. But that's gonna help people out there. They're gonna get something out of that.
Yeah.
And so and then on top of all that, you're a skilled pilot. You're involved in AI. You're just such a unique leader that I really admire you. I really respect you and look up to you. And I just want to thank you for being you and coming on HeroFront today. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for what you're doing. I appreciate the kind words, but what you're doing is also extremely important, and you're allowing people like myself to share their stories, and it's very meaningful, very
Absolutely.
impactful. Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. This was the hero's journey of Colonel Cinco Hamilton, and we're out.